This program has been made possible in part by
I'd like to welcome Barry Klein and Laura Bryant, and we're going to talk about color. And I just can't, this is so fabulous, all the things you have out here on the table.
It's a big buffet table.
Yes.
And I had the audacity to ask you, Laura, if this was made with 1 or 2 yarns, right?
Yes, you did, Shay.
Yes.
And of course, your shawl is made with a lot of yarns. In fact, the yarns that are here in front of you on the table, all of those yarns are in the shawl that you're wearing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, how do you go about putting so many yarns in a shawl?
It's actually, that's a very good question. The first thing you have to do is make some sense of it visually, because that pile of colors is so disorganized that it's, as my husband is fond of saying, a messy fruit salad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
I love that. I love that saying. So what you do is what I've done on the table in front of me here, which is to arrange the colors from light to sort of medium dark.
Okay.
Yeah, and the bright ones still kind of fit in there okay. And you can use, as you can see, neutrals and brights, and all of those colors are in there as well. But it's not, it doesn't matter, especially because you're never using any one yarn for more than 2 rows.
Okay, that's why you have little quantities?
Well, really we have little quantities because we want to use all those yarns up.
It's a great thing.
It's a stash buster, absolutely.
Okay.
So the secret here is don't throw anything away. When you're making all your garments at the end, little bits and pieces, save them. Because you thought 1 or 2 yarns, there's probably 100 or 200 yarns mixed into what you've got.
And we only need little tiny bits of every one. If you had to go buy the yarn to do this, it would cost a fortune.
Yes.
But instead, you save all those crazy bits of texture and color and all the rest of it. And the important thing is that when it's very, very thin yarn, you're going to be using that just to bulk up something else.
Okay.
When it's a really thick yarn like this one, this might go in on its own. Something like this might have to be tripled or paired with something that's more medium weight.
How much fun that is.
It is very fun, and it's not critical except in the color. The color part is critical, because if you put this with this, it's not going to blend. Exactly, it's not going to blend.
You want it to flow, basically like a waterfall. You want the colors to flow and blend. We call these blendies, where they just blend from one to the other. And you can use lots and lots of different yarns, or what we've done here is created like an organized chaos. We've narrowed it down.
A more restrained palette, which is what I'm wearing as well. It's a more restrained palette. It doesn't have every color in the world in it, so, but it still does go from
It's a non-stash garment.
It is a stash garment, because again, it's got a gazillion yarns in it.
Oh, okay.
But you're staying more in tune with a color story and a color family rather than going from one extreme to the other.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's just great.
Now, a sweater like this one also is a more restrained palette, and one thing that's happened here is that consistent throughout is 1 strand of kid mohair in sort of a khaki color, and then held with it is something else, another thin yarn, all the way through, and you can see where it changes to another yarn.
And you really didn't pattern it.
No, you do it randomly, but again, you don't want to go for more than a few rows, because you don't want to run the risk of something being standing out too much, either in a stiffness or a thickness or in its color.
Would it change your gauge if you went too many rows?
Yes, it might.
Okay.
It might.
And did you pre-tie all of the components that are in there?
I didn't, and in fact, there aren't any knots in this sweater. What you do is randomly, including in the middle of the sweater, don't do it all at one edge. When you want to change from one component to another, you simply overlap them for a few stitches, because it's not going to change the thickness for a few stitches. And if you do it here one time and here one time and here one time, they're not lining up on top of one another, and you don't get that thick thing that you might get at an edge.
And now there's no tails to bury.
There are no tails to bury. It's done. It's done.
Oh, finishers, we're going to be happy with that.
Yes.
All right, now let's move to the scarf where you do have tails.
Okay, yes, you do have tails.
Uh-huh.
And what we're going to do here...
First of all, are you working from this palette with the scarf?
I am. All of these yarns up to about here have appeared to about here. Like, you can see this ribbon here.
So well.
You can see this green one here. and the cream is only down to about here. So yes, and you can see I'm moving into more color as we get over here.
Okay, and so now back to what Barry was talking about.
Okay, in this case, because it's a scarf and because it's on much bigger needles, I think these are 17s, there's really no place to have those ends overlap. They'd be sticking out all over the place. So instead we've decided to make it a self-fringing scarf, just like your shawl. Your shawl is the same construction, only
Over
wider.
here.
Just wider, and it was a little bit smaller needle. So what we're doing...
knit. We have to show, you have to show the knitting here.
Absolutely. Let me show you how to knit it.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're knitting on the bias, and we're knitting in garter stitch. So the first thing we're going to do, we have our 3 strands of yarn.
Yes.
We're going to increase one in the first stitch.
Okay.
And I'm doing that by knitting in the front
and in the back.
And then knitting in the back. And what that does by doing it in the first stitch is it puts that little bump on the inside.
Okay.
Then I'm going to knit across to the last 2 stitches.
So you have 3 yarns.
I have 3 yarns together.
And you do this technique of increasing at one end and decreasing at the other.
And that makes
on
it
your
look
non-joining row. The other row is just a plain row.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. Only every other row.
Okay. And that gives you that diagonal look.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oops, so there I am at my last 2 stitches, so I'm going
to put those
knit
together.
those 2 together.
So you always have the same number of stitches on the needle.
And so
that's making it go at this angle.
Okay.
Now we're simply going to cut those 3 yarns off,
which makes your fringe.
Leaving about an 8-inch tail. And then we're going to add our next yarn, and this is a thick one, and it's only a single strand, so I'm just going to line it up.
Yes.
Make an overhand knot, which is simply around and through, and tug it up next to the needle, and start my next row.
Well, Laura, that's brilliant.
It's simple. It's very simple.
And fun, and we can use up our stash. Well, thanks.